Okay, well, excellent, guys. Welcome to this, which would be the beginning of a second course, and this is kind of the course where we end up getting mad. We go mad at the end. So that's like the certificate. So if you ended up mad, it means it's kind of like you integrated it. No, definitely it's gonna be kind of opening in kind of flexible. I would say the attitude. And just want to see if this is 3. No. And again, I would like to say something I said in to you guys is that I'm going to be looking into Spanish and the kind of like relationship with English, and there's going to be at times we're going to be looking at a play of words. Yeah, like. This is another way of getting information from the word, and it's like it's taking the word and using a completely different perspective. It's not a perspective of definitions. Okay, the cat's complaining. I'm not sure if it's because of the noise. And it's kind of like to see something that the word could express in another way, yeah? But you're not taking the definition of the word. Hey, I have to begin to speak to it in Spanish. No. Okay, so that's gonna be there, yeah? And what? Look, just a second, because I think she's asking for water, and if I don't give her water, she's just not gonna stop. So just a second.
Yes, the cat's more important.
It's the manager of the house, so I have to.
Yeah.
I love it when the cat. I gave her the food, give her water. She just stares at it and she leaves. Like, okay. She tends, because my daughter's not here, and it's kind of like the relationship. You see that the cat kind of ends up choosing one. Well, it's my daughter, and so I think she's missing her.
It was much more about controlling you.
Probably, yeah. Okay, where was I? Okay, so probably you can hear her in the background. So this thing with the languages is going to be very present, I think. This way of looking into words, both English and Spanish, and doing relationships between them. But we have to be flexible in the sense that, you know, not kind of like, yeah, but the dictionary doesn't say that about the word. You know, you just have to be loose. We're using the word or the access of the word, because the word is just a pointer, to use it as a way, as a mirror to extract something we have inside, yeah, or something which belongs to reality. So we're going to be using language, but I'll be putting a couple of examples for you to see. Probably those who have been with Alejandra understand that kind of way of just using words and numbers like in a flexible way to do this mirror effect, yeah. And because we're going to be connecting a lot of times to things that goes beyond our border, there's going to be a kind of a need for sometimes like, how can I say, the linear logical mind to just stay open, yeah, for it to just sinking in a different area of your consciousness. Good. So I'm not sure if Therese, hello. Hey, there you are. So the word or the name, space-time structures. Okay, space-time structures. I'm going to start first with the word structure. Okay, structure. And then we'll go on to the other two words. Or the structure of the structures, okay? It's like the mother structure and the father structure. And At the end of the day, of all the different things that are gonna come up in the sophisticated details, sophisticated, how's the wording, nuance, differentiation, what always helps us not get lost in the complexity is to have this structure view, or we could also call it like axiomatic structural view, logical structure view. And this isn't something to oversimplify, it's just having this clear axiomatic aspect, and from there we can go into any kind of forest or any jungle, and it's complex and diversity in it of paths that we can take. But we always got this kind of like a compass. You call it a compass, you know, to have this simple compass that is always going to give us this orientation and guide. So probably if we start at what we mean by structure is probably like the key pillars or the key logical pillars on which we could say space-time is constructed, built, how it works, how it moves, how it grows. And so we're looking at this kind of, I also, we could say like the kind of like basic principles, the basic principles upon which the rest can construct itself, yeah. And I guess if I had to go to the most basic structure, and when I say basic, I mean the most elemental, the most fundamental structure of space-time, logical structure of space-time, possibly, I say logical structure because a lot of people, when they tend to look for the structure of space-time, they're going to use it in, for example, like in geometry is a very typical way. They look at the geometry. Now, you see the thing about the geometry, it's already working with space. So there has to be something, so a logical structure is not really a space and it's not really a time. It is kind of like the invisible principle that allows space and time to emerge. So we could say that geometry is still aspects of expression, not of it's not axiomatic in the most deeper sense. Yeah. So what I would say is the two base or the basic principle axiomatic structure, if you want, would be the differentiation between two principles. And the way that we could classify these two principles, a generic way, could be masculine and feminine. Masculine and feminine principles, yeah? Now, when we say the feminine, let's say the feminine, in Spanish, we could say the feminine, what kind of way to represent it in its most fundamental way, we could call it the ma. The ma. And the masculine aspect, the masculine, we could call it the pa. And if we, because now here we got the feminine, here we got the masculine, okay? Now if we unfold each of them, if we unfold them, like here we got a mama. A mama in Spanish is a mother. La mamá, it's the mother. And if we unfold the female principle, we've got a papá, which in Spanish is a father. So then we got the mama and we got the papá. So we could think, wow, that's oversimplified, but the depth of what's behind this very simple structure, or what's behind this very simple aspect, is the fundamental axiom or algorithm, if you want, of the building of any space-time. Yeah. So female, masculine, ma, unfold it, ma, mama, pa, papa, father. But also there's something very interesting here, and is that if you say ma, pa, in Spanish that means a map. A mapa in Spanish is a map. So what is a map? It is, in a way, the dialogue between the ma and the pa, or the relationship between the ma and the pa, between the feminine and the masculine. Yeah. And what is a map? What is a map? It is a reference system. It's a reference system in order to orient and guide yourself. I know that these two words seem like synonyms, if that's the way you say it, the synonyms, but we're going to be understanding them in two different ways. To orient yourself and to guide yourself in two different ways. Yeah. So this would be like the fundamental, essential, at the end of the day, if you boil it all down to what's it is this relationship between what we could call the feminine and the masculine. Okay. And the sound, because we're talking about language also, the sound we're going to relate with feminine is ma, and the sound we're going to relate with masculine is pa. And when you have a mama, I'll explain also why this unfoldment. The mama, you have a mother, you got papa, you got a father, so then you got life. Okay? Because if you have a mama and you have a papa, that means you also got there's a son between both of them. There's a creation between both of them. Yeah. And at the same time, these basic essential principles are the essential guide or reference system of the map. Okay. Now, possibly the thing is, this is what sometimes creates a confusion when we're talking about male and female. Because one thing is the principle, like the structure principle, like the mother, the mother and father cell, or the stem cell, like the source principle. And one thing is how it is expressed. Okay. Now, this is very different. And sometimes what happens is we confuse the expression for the source. For example, like when we say female principle, we have the expression in our civilization, in our human civilization, of how that is expressed. Yeah. How it expressed in gender, for example, that's an expression of this principle. So when this principle is expressed into space-time, suddenly we begin to have different individualities which have a gender, which is feminine and masculine. Okay, but that is an expression of it. And although we are differentiating these two principles, we also must understand that they are completely interdependent. So really you can't have one without the other. This is kind of like a yin-yang-ish kind of way of seeing it, because I think the Orientals have an extraction of this understanding. So they say this is Jing, this is Yang. You know, they've got that. In the way they were able to get into that. Now, I don't want to put too much cultural expressions of this. And just try stick to a very basic view of it. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like that. It's like there are these two principles and they are intertwined, because actually they are two principles of the same source. So it's like the first division of the indivisible. The first division of the indivisible is the creation of, or the differentiation between two principles. But they come from the same thing. So it's what we call a logical differentiation, yeah? But really they intertwine, yeah? What is going to happen in space-time is that there are aspects that are going to have a greater perfume of the feminine or the masculine. For example, if we take the difference between woman and man, in them we are going to see that kind of intensified expression. But we can't. What we can't do is think that in the man there's no feminine and in the woman there's no masculine, yeah? Because the principles are correlated, although in the expressions we can see a kind of a tendency in one side or the other, yeah? Or actually a differentiation. So, but trying to get it in its purest form, like in its essence, it's basically this. Now, this is the hard one. It's like, in language, what would be the best way, what would be the best word that we have in language to describe the key core difference between feminine and masculine, yeah? It's so simple that I think it's hard. I'm going to give you some, okay, but it has to be taken. I don't think there's any one good definition. That's what I found. It's like, I don't think you can. It's so simple that not even language can capture that simplicity of its differentiation. So, if I had to say, I'm not sure if any of you guys can come up with, you know, like, what is that difference? If there's a word or in the differentiation, what would you, how would you describe it, or what word would you put to kind of to express the essence of the feminine and essence of the masculine in the best that words could do? Could you, maybe you can write it down if it comes? Because all the things that we're going to be seeing at the end of the day have to do with how these two principles differentiate each other and connect with each other, how they dialogue with each other. Yeah? It seems easy, but it's not that easy to see the difference. You know why? Because we've got a lot of definitions of the differentiation. So, you know, but what's the key essence? The key essence. Flow and focus. It's hot. Animus. I don't know the difference between those two. Animus like life, yeah? Archetypical energies. Okay. and it's like, it's so fundamental, so essential, that it's very, very simple. I think one way, I don't think language is able to actually extract it in words. I think it's just like, but probably a good one, sperm, egg. Okay, what is interesting about that sperm egg way of seeing it, which is a biological expression, is that it seems to be that the sperm is emitting, it's like it's going towards, and the egg is kind of like receiving. And so if there had to be a very simple differentiation, holding, activating, yeah, it's got those elements. I'm not sure, I think activating like beginning, yeah, Therese? Like initiating, because that would be more the sperm, it's initiating. But the egg is like holding that initiation. Well, I'll tell you the one that I kind of sense there. See, I'm doing this a lot with my because it's like extracting the basic atomic pitch receive. I would say that is very close to it. It's something like emitting and receiving. It's something in those terms. And think about this, that if at the end of the day, what is space-time? It is a system, it's a reference system, but it's also a system of communication. If we had to like, what is the purpose of space-time? It's a system of communication. So in this communication, for there to be any communication, there has to be two essential roles, an emitter and a receiver. If there's only an emitter and no receiver, there's no communication really. So space-time is the unfoldment of the indivisible because it's communicating with itself. So we could say nothing expresses itself in totality and everything, but when it does this fundamental unfoldment and separation, if you want, what is happening there? Nothing is searching for a mechanism of communication with itself. Because nothing has no separation and no differentiation, you see, this is the issue. It's like there is this, we are all connected to this essential indivisible source. But in its essential nature, it has no division. So probably what's the purpose of the universe kind of question, I would say for there to be communication, for nothing to have the possibility of communicating. Okay, so if it's unfolding itself to communicate, so no division separates into two principles. Those two principles are going to be, if it's communicating, it's going to be, well, you talk and I'll listen. Yeah, in a strange way, when it comes to communication, the roles invert, isn't it? Okay, you talk, I listen. You emit, I receive. Another simple way is like to give and take in a way, or receive. So at the end, if you look at all the, the differentiation, it has these, it's like, it boils down to this simple thing. It's an emitter and a receiver, okay? Also, a way that Alejandra used to, she doesn't say it a lot anymore, but she used to differentiate. She used to talk about the question and the answer. It's like the feminine is more the question and the masculine is more the answer. This is also an interesting way of seeing it. Like the unfoldment, it's an unfoldment of question and answers. Because it's like nothing, the paradox, nothing has everything in it. So it has all the questions and all the answers, we could say. Okay, so it's just a way. It has all the questions, all the answers, but it hasn't got a way to have the consciousness of the questions and the answers that it has. So it's like sometimes I put the example, it's so close to its essence that it can't see itself. It's like the eye, you see, it can't see itself. Its isness is so I, as the eye, the eyeball, that it can't see itself. Yeah. Now we could talk about the I in the sense of the absolute subject, which is the absolute consciousness, which is nothingness. It's like that I, isn't it? It's just like that I, that it's so I that it can't see itself, so it unfolds. This would be kind of like the main, this would be like the core structure. The structure of structures, okay? Now the first we have a ma and a pa, yeah, which would be the separation of the two principles. And then we have a mama and a papa, okay? So what we could say is inside each principle, there's also an unfoldment. I'm not sure if you remember about this, about the first and second unfoldment. Can you say solar and planetary? You see, that's a good way for me to explain now the difference between the essence and its expression. So if we're talking about suns and planets, they are celestial bodies that are expressing this dialogue. You see, but they are still expressions of the core male and female principle. Yeah, possibly they are very, very important expressions. Yeah, so at the end of the day, because now we're already talking about space and time there, I'm trying to go to the structure aspect, you see? Like the structure, you know, which basically would be this. But in the moment that we have to try and understand it, we have to use words, which words are going to take us to space-time, yeah? So solar is an emitter, isn't it? And planets are more receivers. So they are, it's like a feminine, it's like a mappa. It's a mappa. Yeah? Good. What was I going to say? So, now, why is it important that we have two of each? Okay, which is creating a system of four. Because it's so simple, it's hard to explain that. Because at the same time, another, no, I'm not going to say that difference. No, I'm not going to, because I think it's going to confuse. So the thing is that we're going to have, because if we have mappa, what do we have? A left and a right. Can you see that? But we don't have an up and down. So we got a left and a right, but we don't have an up and down. So if we do this, what do we have there? We've got an up, a down, a left, and right. And we've got a system of four. Now, what is interesting about a system of four is that a system of 4, being 4, the number of a design, we have a design that can interrelate what we could also call the up now. So the left, feminine, the right, masculine. But what is the up and the down now? The up is what we could call, this is another difficult one to put, the up is what we could call the more intangible. And the down is more tangible, which also is related with the masculine and the feminine. So this is where we have what Alejandra calls the 4 quadrants. The 4 quadrants. And I'm trying not to use references of space, but if we've got a map, a mappa, as we know, to be able to have a map and for the map to be a good reference system, let's look at basic map. Just imagine it has to have, what does it have to have? I can go up in the map, I can go down in the map, I can go to the left and I can go to the right. What we call in space, north, south, east, and west. Yeah. Now that's already an expression in space of this basic structure. At the end, everything has this kind of basic structure. First of all, the ma and the ba. Well, first of all, nothing. Nothing, everything. That's the key aspect. But if we want to begin to see what it's kind of made out of, okay, female, male, female. Okay, but then inside that, for there to be a creation, there has to be a possibility of unfoldment of those 2 principles. And it's going to make up this system of 4. The system of 4, which is going to be very important when we talk about the female calendar, or in Spanish called calendaria, okay? Because at the end of the calendaria, what's interesting is to use the year as because we all going to be living the same year. We're all going to be living the same year, yeah? Now, probably the difference is between one person who goes through a year and another person who goes through the year is how well they were able to, is that the word exploit is not the right word, but how much wisdom were they able to extract out of that same length of time? And that wisdom or that consciousness that they got from that year is going to have to do with how they related to time and space. Okay. Now, ma, ba. Okay. Feminine, masculine. But now we got an up and then we got a down. If we want to see it, the up is more masculine and the down is more feminine. Okay. But probably it's not the best way of seeing it. So I'm going to use another kind of word. Okay. So this, probably the left, we could say it's a more receiver, the right is more an emitter. But this is at the same time is a simplification. For example, let me try to show. If we see the sun and the earth, what do we see? We see an emitter and a receiver. Okay, let's take away the sun. Let's put the parameter on earth. Now the earth for humans is an emitter. We are the receivers. So it means that there is always going to be within the emitter a receiver, within the receiver an emitter. Okay, this is something important to take into consideration. And at the end of what you're doing with your life is going to have to do with how you are emitting and how you're receiving, meaning how are you communicating? At the end of the day, that is the simplification of it all. How are you establishing your reference system and your system of communication? At the end of the day, that's it. Yeah. So a map. And the basic structure of any system is there's a mother, there's a father, there's a son. Okay. Good. Now, the up and the down, probably the best way. I'm just going to use the ones that I think is more simplified, because this is the thing. No word can reduce what the up and the down is. There's no word, there's no one good word that can enclose it all. There are words that can come close. It's like nothing. When we're talking about the indivisible, it's not really like, it's nothing. It's just the best word we have to point to that source that we all are intimately connected, and we all are which we intimately are, and we all have the intuitive notion of this. Well, not all, but a lot of people have this intuitive notion. Yeah. And because they don't have more kind of logical interdimensional references, they use mystical, religious, but it's they're trying to connect with this. Yeah. Reflector, absorber, reflector, absorber. It's an interesting one. Reflector and absorber. That's it. My head is trying to get around, because it's not the same as receiving and emitting. It's like reflecting and absorbing. Interesting. Okay. Well, now the top and the bottom. The best way I can say is that this top is going to be more non-linear. And this one has more to do with something which is linear. It means it has a sequence. In non-linear, now this is where we have to go to expressions of non-linear. It's like, this is more to see it like a sphere, and this is more to see it like a line. But at the end, if you take this, let's say a circle, and you put it like that, you got a line. You put it together, you got so it's in a way non-linear. It's all together, and this is kind of differentiated. Another word which is not all that precise, but we could say impersonal and personal. It's not all that precise, but, and look, for example, if we're talking about time, and we say, okay, what's the female? It's the past. What's the male? It's the future. Now, can we reduce the male and female aspect saying it's past and future? No. You see, that's the thing, the structural principle, you can see it in many things, but you can't reduce, from that thing that you see, you can't reduce it. So when you see time, what is the future? It's like emitting. It's emitting the direction. What is the past? It's like it's receiving that to give it the ground for it to emerge, because the future is like a new version, and the past is like old versions, but which leave the soil, and which, when they connect in the present, they got a sun, they got a creation in the present. See? So we have this, something that we have to differentiate is like the pure essence of the masculine and feminine, and then it's many diverse expressions. Could you say that it's an aspect of something, but it's not the thing in itself? Yeah, that's close, I would say. Yeah, because it's in that something, but it's not really a thing because it's a logical principle. That's why I say, you know, because a lot of what people tend to, when they look, because they tend to, what is the basic structure? The basic structure, and they tend to end up in geometry, like if that is the basic structure, but really it's not. It is a very, it's like, it's very close when we're talking about space. At the end, space, it's all geometry in a way, but the logical structure is not a geometry. If, for example, so it's not a thing. A female or male principle is not a thing, but it's expressed in all things. So it's very, you see, it's like the essential perfume of something. It's very intangible. It's like that which, it's that something which is not a thing that you kind of get me, yeah? So I would also say, we could kind of also say, okay, this is more impersonal and this is more personal. And in the non-lineal, we have a question, we have a feminine and a masculine. And in the lineal, we have a feminine and a masculine. Yeah? And here we've got a lineal and non-lineal map. A lineal, it's also like the first and the second unfoldment. Yeah? The first unfoldment of nothing is non-lineal, but the second is lineal, meaning it has like a clear differentiation. So everything we're going to be seeing at the end boils down to this. Can you guys kind of sense what it's pointing towards? And what is sustaining all this? Like the whiteboard, for example. I always put this analogy. It's nothing. It's a nothing. But it's a nothing that has like this axiomatic logical structure, and it expresses it through everything. Planet, suns, men, women, family ways of organization. And when you're going to see a government, you're always going to see a masculine or feminine figures. It's like it's going to express in everything. In communication, you have an emitter and a receiver. In information, you have a question and an answer. Left and right wing. For example, politics have this. It's like they express one of these kind of tendencies. And look, there's no political system in the world that hasn't got, in its simple way of seeing it, a left and right tendency. Every single political system, no matter, well, if it's a dictatorship, what it has, it's got an enclosed left or an enclosed right, meaning that it doesn't allow the communication with the other side, yeah? But it still has it. It's like the only thing it's repressed, basically. So it's not that it hasn't got it, it's just repressed. So it's all there. So the left is going to be more feminine and the right is going to be more masculine. And there we've got the different expressions, like the left or the feminine more like, you know, the loving, and the right is more like, okay, move your asses, let's produce some stuff. And then we've got the pathologies of both, or we've got the pathologies, the dysfunctions, and also the kind of non-dynamic aspect. It's like when they close on themselves, like a dictatorship, yeah? So it's very different, a right wing when it's a dictatorship than a right wing when it's got this democracy system, yeah? Because what democracy at the end is trying to do is a dialogue. It's establish a kind of a system which allows a dialogue. A dictatorship, no. That's why dictatorships don't work for a long time. They work for a certain time. And what it tends to happen is that there's been an imbalance on one side, so they go to the other. And it's like, okay, you guys have messed up so bad that I'm going to take control, in a way, yeah? It's like going from the Russia, from the Tsar, you know, and then going to the communists. It's like, it's this polarized, so the best system that we have, and it seems to work, it's a system where they can at least have the opportunity of expression. That's why dictatorships don't last that long. It doesn't really seem to work in a long period, and especially in this moment in space-time where masculine and feminine are beginning to become very fluid and very interconnected. Meaning there's no such, like that, the clear distinction between them and the, how can we say, the non-permeable distinction and communication, that is, it's starting to become more and more permeable. This is something that has to do with time, yeah? So good, left, right wing, yeah. We can see many different ways of seeing it, okay? I guess let's leave it here for let's go for a break, because believe it or not, it's all there. Look how simple it is, eh? Beautiful. Except if anybody has something that they'd like to ask. We'll leave it there, okay? Excellent. Okay, so let's go for, let's say, 5 minutes, because we haven't been long. And this is like the structure part. Now let's go into space, and then let's go into time, okay? So let's kind of see how this begins to express in the aspect of space and then the aspect of time. At the end, we want to reach time because we're talking about the feminine calendar. It means a way of administrating time, a calendar. So speak to you guys, let's say at 10 past, is that all right? Excellent. Excellent. Now, okay. Now, if we look in a sense, now Jeff has a cat. The cat, because Carla, my wife, she's not in the house either, so it seems like the cat takes that position. Now, taking this, let's look at the concept of space, yeah? If we're going to look at the concept of space, that's where it's good to kind of, how can I say, like, in a sense, space at the end is going to be expressing the structure, okay? It's going to be expressing these two principles, this up and down, this left and right. Now we're going to position ourselves on planet Earth, okay? So we position ourselves on planet Earth. And the simple way that we kind of organize our map, our orientation, wherever we are, probably the most structural way of orienting ourselves, no matter where we are, is this north, south, east, west, okay? So we could kind of go like this, you know, like north, south, okay? So there we can have that. East and west. Now, in English, west is like that, okay? In Spanish, it's going to be an O, and I'm going to be using the O mainly in a second, yeah? But one thing that is interesting, and this came from Mali, she told me. And she said, if you look at like NEWS, what you have there is the word news. This is a way of using language that it's not about its definition. It's something, it's trying to use a word as a resource of going beyond even its definition. It's like, it's a way of extracting more juice out of the word, yeah? So we have to go, so news, that's very interesting, news, because what, you know, like what is new? What is news? What I like about that is that when we say what is new and what is the news, it's in a way, it's like, how are we connecting with the space in this time? And in a way, the orientation is in each of us is like, I'm always connecting with these 4 directions, but also because it is the space, but also time is reflecting the same structure, okay? Or we could begin to see that time is going to reflect the same structure. So what is the news? It's a very beautiful way of putting it, because it's like in my connection with all these directions, I'm allowing time to express what is news, you know, what is new, yeah? That would be an English way of extracting that, you see? Now, the word news says that of course, it's the word that we all conventionally know and it has in the dictionary, plus in your own consciousness, it has this adding to it, this extra value, yeah? And I remember when Molly told me that, I thought, that's excellent, you know? What is the news? How am I connecting to space-time, you know? How is, in this moment, how I'm connecting to how the structure of space-time is expressing itself at this moment in my life, you know? The news. But in Spanish, we're going to be using the word, the O. Good. And so the north and south is going to be marking this kind of differentiation between, yeah, these two. And the east and the west, this, yeah. Now, we're going to begin to look at this in a more space way of seeing it. And this is where we've got, if we're going to use it as like the cardinal orientation, this would be like northeast, yeah? And I'm just going to put its name. Here we've got the southeast, say. Here we've got the northwest. In Spanish, it's oeste. And here we've got the southwest. It's interesting, the word, when we say in Spanish east, west, we say este, oeste. Now the interesting thing is, let me put it this way, it's like este, o este, which is together, but if we put it in this way, it is actually, it's both saying este. So it's like, it's connected to the same thing, but in a differentiation, in an O. It's este, oeste, yeah? But if we have the y-axis, we can say y oeste, which it means it's connected, but it's differentiated, yeah? And interesting that the east, west, this way of differentiating on the Earth, it would be the equator. If we see this like on the Earth, this would be like the equator, wouldn't it? Yeah. This one would be what we establish as Greenwich to mark this differentiation. But we're also going to take into consideration using as this axis the Eiffel Tower of France. Okay, but it looks the same, yes. And soon also means something. Does it mean anything? I don't know. Is that a Spanish, an English word?
I just looked it up. It says it's a past of sew. Cosido sería the past of coser. De coser the stitch.
Ah, okay, of soon. So
When the W was there,
so it's
the
like
West.
the
Soon.
next,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, suing
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
suing the net of space-time, yeah?
Yes.
Because at the end, space-time is a net, isn't it? So you see, this way of to sew, to weave, interesting. See, there's some beauty. There's some beauty when we see it that way. So they're the English. You see, there's the English also participating. So we're going to try and use the riches of the both languages and connect them. Yeah. Now, one in the Spanish, at the bottom we have so, se. If we put it the other way around, we say se, so. Seso, what a seso is, it's like the brain. The word seso is the brain. Now think like, what is the brain doing? It is making lineal a non-lineal consciousness. Okay, that's somehow, and the brain has got this right and left hemisphere to it, yeah? So the seso, the brain, has got this function of connecting to the non-lineal. Let's say that the non-lineal, let's put this as an example. It's a radio wave. And what is the brain? The brain is kind of like this antenna system that can capture that wave, but then it can put it lineal. It can emit a song, but the song has a beginning and the end. But in the wavelength, really, there's no beginning and end. It's like the whole thing is kind of there. Can you see that? So this seso, this part of the bottom is talking more about, that's why I say it talks more about the personal, because it's talking more about, or the lineal. It's talking about that aspect. Oh, another way of differentiating the top and the bottom, a good way of putting it is the expressed and the non-expressed. That's another good way of putting it. Can you see that the radio wave, in a way, it's like not expressed. It's there, but it's not expressed. When an antenna is able to capture it and it expresses it, that song comes into, it begins to, from being a wave, it begins to become a sound. And I know that every wave is a sound, but try grab the analogy, yeah? That is it. So we are connected to both areas, to the non-manifested, non-lineal, and to the manifested, lineal. And what is allowing us to manifest, in a way, the non-manifested? Our seso, our brain. Okay? I know it's not just the brain, blah, 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 but it's getting that understanding that there is an antenna that is making lineal a non-lineal consciousness. Okay, so non-lineal consciousness, lineal consciousness. Non-lineal, lineal. Non-manifested, manifested. And when all these come together, we have the news, and we have the suan. Okay. Now, what do we have here at the top? we have none. If we look at it in English now, we have none. Yeah, that I made a mistake before. I said a non-lineal. No, it's non. It's N-O-N lineal. So none. None is like no one, isn't it? It's like none is like no one. So it's not one. So it's also it has this expression of the none, of the it's more impersonal, you see. So when the none links with the seso, now we use in English and Spanish, when the none links with the seso, with the brain, we have a system of communication between the non-lineal and the lineal, the non-manifested and the manifested, okay? In its question and answer, feminine and masculine aspect. Then, of course, there are these dialogues which cross here. Yeah, but not going to go too much into that. For example, another way of seeing it is that we can see this as no, but when we see it from the right, we see it as on. So this aspect is the one that turns on or says no. And it's the non-lineal female aspect. It's like the question, but there is an origin of the question that is not lineal. It is like, it's like nothingness asking itself a question, but it's not like, it's not the way that we ask questions, okay? So this is something that activates or disactivates what is going to occur in this news here. So there's a selection occurring here. Also N, if we see it, N in Spanish is in, N. So this is also going to talk about something that is within things. So the non-lineal, where is it? Within the lineal. Okay, like where is the non-manifested? Is it somewhere? It's within. It's like the in Spanish you say consciente and inconsciente. Where's the inconsciente, the unconscious? It's in the conscious. Yeah. So the non-lineal, it's not a different like heavenly world out there. It is a dimension within this lineal, concrete, manifested world. It's within, it's part of. It's like the DNA, it's inside it. It's not tangible, but it's allowing the tangible to be the way it is. Yeah. It's very interesting to see the word in Spanish of nothingness, which is nada. And if you turn it around, you have Adán. You know, like Adam and Eve. You know, so we have a beginning in the past, Adán, but then we have a beginning. Not really from the future. We have a beginning, non-lineal beginning or non-lineal origin, which is nada. It means it's not about a historical past. Like nothingness isn't something that occurred and then it's now with something. It's nothing is within everything. See, it's not like the way that like Stephen Hawking kind of sees it. It's like, first there was nothing, and then there was the universe. That's not how we're seeing nothing here. Nothing is the primary source, which is always the source. It's like in the present. So the origin, the nothingness, is not something that occurred. You know, like my source in the past. No, it's my source in each present. Of the nada and Adán. And also it has, and nada, if you change it around a bit, it has ADN, has like this ADN, which is DNA. Yeah. So the essential DNA is not, it's a no thing, it's a nothing, it's not a thing, yeah? But in that no thing, it has these two principles, male, female, which make up all things. Okay? And each thing has a seso, it's a way of saying like a brain, it has a system of connecting. Each thing has a system to connect with nothing inside it. Okay? But every individuality, because if there's something that we're going to have in the expressed space-time is individual is connected with each thing is connected with the no thing. Okay, in its DNA, it has nada, it has nothing. So this would be like, we could say, space, because we're talking about north, east, south, west. A way of organizing or expressing, we could say, this this kind of quadrant essential structure behind all things. Yeah. Now the thing is, you see this very much like how like if they were completely separated, yeah, left, right, up, down. But really, what's occurring in it's they communicating, it's alive, this dialogue, and that's where time comes in. What is time? It's a way of relating space. You see, time is the dynamic aspect and space is the stable aspect. But space is more like a feminine, if we can say, and time is more like a masculine. It's like it's initiating things. And space is receiving it. Yeah? It's like space receives that time and shows what's the news. So again, this male and female in itself, space-time is an expression, very essential expression of what we call the male and female principles. Yeah? Good. So now, let me see how I'm going to do it now. Now, when we're talking about time, we're talking about a biorhythm. We're talking about, what's the way to put it? We're talking about a process. We're talking about a process. When we're talking about time, we're talking about a process. Now, do you remember how we, I think I explained it in the law class, I think it was, that there was these 4 years that make up a period, the 4 years that make up a period, and it's like the 365, 365, 365, and the last year is the leap year, 366. And we got the 4 years, and that makes up a period. Remember that? And then what we're going to see here is that each year is also representing an aspect, a dynamic aspect of a process. Okay? A dynamic aspect of a process. And the way that we put it was, in each process, the best analogy I have, I think the best one is, for example, nutrition. Nutrition is very good to see this, which is, it's also a system of 4, but it's talking about, it's not talking about areas, it's talking about a dynamic process. So we have the year, what we call the assume, to assume. we have assimilate. Asimila. To challenge. I also like to, and to decide. This is a way of putting it, but basically it's a dynamic process has to do with receiving and emitting. Okay, so to assume is to consume. To assume is to consume. So it's like there is something important where I have to consume, like reality. For example, now you are assuming your position. Assume is to position yourself and to receive from the outer, okay? So I assume, I consume. Now, to assume and consume, after you have to assimilate. It means you have to, that which you consume, there's a process within you, within life, that has to do a selection. A selection of what I can use of that and what I can't use of that. An assimilation, okay? That is like the receiving process. But now, when after the digestion, what do we have? An activation of energy. Now that is something I put within is now giving me a force to go outside. So that's the challenge, or sometimes I like to also use the word challenge, but it's also, it's moving. It's like the movement, okay? So I move, and when I move, so now I'm going out, yeah? When I move, I'm also deciding at the end, deciding or making sense. The decision has to do more with the mental process, isn't it? Making sense of the action I'm doing. So it's eating, digestion, activating action, and making sense out of that. Deciding how to administrate that, how to perceive that, how to assume, muse. You know what I like about that? I'm not sure what you've seen there, but you know when they say about the poets to connect with the muses? You see? And it's interesting because the letter A is letter 1. 1 is like the individual, isn't it? So when you are assuming, what are you doing? I think it's very interesting though, because when you are assuming, what do? First, you have an individual aspect. So you have to assume your individual position, okay? And then from there, you are capturing the muse. So that means you're capturing something that is in a different area of consciousness. Yeah, so for example, a food is something that is not in my body. That's why I eat it. It's in a different area of what I have. Yeah, actually that's not that true, but let's just take it this way. So first I have to know that I'm here and the food's there. I have to assume my position. I have to assume my location, my individuality. And then I consume that, which is the muse. But then I have to assimilate it. You know, I have to assimilate it, and then I have to activate it, and the challenge of moving it, and then I have to make sense out of it. Yeah, which is the part of, I'm not sure if you remember, this had a correlation with the 4 kingdoms. Like the mineral is to assume. The mineral is what has a position, and the mineral has this capacity of, the mineral or the inorganic captures life. See, in Spanish, there's difference between 2 words and I don't know how it is in English. And let's see, Laura, if you can help me. Because one thing is captar and one thing is capturar. So it's like a different process, because captar, you're open. Capturar, whatever you receive, you close it. Captar, capturar. So this is just another way of talking about a process of time which is doing this movement. So this is where we are going to see an 8 occur here. We're going to begin to see an 8, meaning something which is going to link them all together, like a camera shutter captures the photo. You see, thanks, Therese, you just gave me an example to explain it. You see, the first thing the camera does, it opens to light, and then it grabs a photo. You see, but the first thing it does, it opens to whatever's there, and then it has a button where it can kind of grab it. See? Capture an idea, capture the criminal. Yeah, but first you have to be like a mineral. You see the mineral, like let's say water, which is not a mineral, but it's a mineraloid. It's inorganic. Water is like completely kind of open. It's like it's just receiving everything. But there's a moment that when it receives, it has to select, it has to capture. That is the difference between assume and assimilate. Assume is I position myself and I'm completely open. But then after, like for example, after listening to this, I somehow eat the whole apple, but then I have to do a selection. What do I grab and what do I let go? Because of what I'm sharing, the natural thing would be that you would discriminate within you. It's like when you eating an apple or a food. It's like you're not going to use all of its elements. You're just going to use some. In the same way, when you listen to this, you're not going to use all of the elements. You're going to use some. Now when you're listening, you're in a assuming. Okay? But when you're processing, you're in a different moment. Yeah? You're like, it's more about capturing the image. Good. And then okay. Well, basically what I'm trying to say here is this. It's kind of like we can use this as, now here's the difficult part. Each of these are receiving and emitting. But let's see what time it is, not to. Look, capture an idea. That's very, you see your sexo at one moment, it's open. It's like an open antenna. And you look and you're searching for, that's captar. That's captar. It's, you're open and you're searching. You're like, and then there's a moment that you can start to, you're tuning in, and suddenly you got the radio station. So there, you stop doing the openness and you begin to, okay, I've got it. I've got the radio station. Yeah, so it's captar and capturar. It's two different things. And once you've got it, now what the next thing is to express it. Yeah, capturar, asimilar, and then the next thing is to move and express it. Yeah, the English dictionary doesn't capture the difference. They give the same translation, captar que capturar. Yeah, that sometimes happens, especially in English. There's a lot of times that this happens. That in Spanish there's a differentiation in the meaning, but in English, it's like there's one word that englobes the two meanings. Yeah. So, well, this is kind of going to be your Spanish lesson. It's a 2-in-1. It's space-time structures and Spanish lessons. So. I'll tell you how much the extra is after with the Spanish. Good. Okay. So now I'm trying to find a way to start this. You see, this is the thing, space-time structures, Spanish translation series. Yeah. Okay, now, the one that's going to be more like this assume, we could say mineral, it's more going to be in this area here, okay? So it's more about assume. It's a way of putting it. There's going to be a confusion that's going to create, and I can foresee it, but I'll try and avoid it before. Assume, assimilate. I just want to make clear something now before I say this. All these are interconnected and in an interdialogue. What I'm in this 8, it goes in all directions. Would the feminine calendar is going to choose one type of direction, okay? Why are we going to choose that direction? Because it's the way of connecting them that it's the clear dynamic to expand consciousness in a human, okay? But it's not that the way that I'm going to explain it now is just one direction. There's other directions, yeah? We're just going to choose one direction, okay? Just for you to have that clear. So to assume.
David, can I ask something? Can you give other words for assume? So you said receive?
You see, that's a
receive.
I'll tell you different things about this. Well, the soul or soma, the somatizar, the body, this has to do, it's kind of like in the area of the past, isn't it? It's kind of like that which is the most concrete. So what's important about this area? It's what gives us the individual position to know where our limitations are. So it's assuming a position. That's the first thing, to assume a position. When you assume a position, so you know where you are, that's what this area does for the individual. It's, I know where I am. This is my limitation. This is where I am. So it's to assume where you are. Now, when you know where you are, there you can begin to do what we call a captar. Because here's the thing, is that this is all interconnected. Now we're going to come here, okay? I'm seeing that this is, when you're capting from this future here. You are assuming it, digesting it, assimilating it, activating it, manifesting it, like that. So I think the best thing, Laura, let me finish the sequence and probably you'll grasp it, okay? Osmosis, where did you point that out, Susan?
Yeah. When you're talking about assume and you're taking this in, like a muse, when you were talking about a muse, it's like you're just taking something in like osmosis.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's okay. Yeah, it's a very good way of putting it. Exactly. It's like you're just like water receiving, yeah? Like just receiving. It's just like the minerals in the way it does, you know, like a stone just receives the heat that it's in its environment. It doesn't select, it just receives it. The selection occurs more in the kind of the vegetable kingdom. Yeah? So okay, because this is the thing, each of the quadrants have a receiving and emitting aspect. Okay. For example, if I'm eating, my mouth is receiving food, but it's sending it to the stomach. So it's receiving, but it's emitting. You see? So each of these are going to have a receptive aspect and an emitting aspect. Okay. For now, let's just fix them, okay? Assimilate. This is more about assimilation here. This is, when you assimilate, this is more about, I'm going to put challenge, but I like the activation, you know, the on. So you assimilate it and it goes on. You activate this substance or whatever, yeah? Let's put challenge. There's a reason why it's called challenge. Because when it's activated, now the challenge, what is? And this is more the decide aspect. Now, future. This is how, let's put it this way. The future is an emitter. The future is an emitter. This is a past, and it's receiving. You see, that's the receiving aspect of it. Now, when it's receiving it, the past, it has to be completely open. First, the past is what gives us our position. It's like, thanks to the past, I have the position I have. Now, one thing is my position, and one thing is that position can't grow. It can grow. But the only way of expanding my position is to know where I am. So if I don't know where my position is, I can't expand it. Yeah. So I have to assume my position. And when I assume my position, I can do the amuse, okay? I can do this osmosis that Susan's talking about, this capting from the future. But you see, I'm capting it through all my senses, like if it was capting it in the water, like completely just open to it, just sucking it in, okay? Now, here it's receiving, yeah, but now in this area, let's say this. Here it's receiving, but then it's going to start to emit. It's receiving, but here it starts to emit. So one, I'm capting it. What is also happening within me, within the impersonal aspects of me, there begins to be receives it, and it begins to assimilate it. It's like it receives the food, and now it begins a digestion process. Now, when it receives the food, it begins a digestion process. What begins to happen? It starts activating new nutrients, like a new questions, like on, because depending on the question, it's no or it's on. Okay, so it's like activating a new substance. So this receives it, it activates it, and what's the challenge? To go from the impersonal and bring it down to the personal. See? That's the challenge. That's the challenge aspect. It's to not just keep it in an activation, but to use that activation into the lineal expression. And here it's received, it's manifested. This is where the future becomes manifested, the new version. And then I make a decision how to use this in the lineal, and this begins to what? Again, goes back to this point again. You know what's hard about it? That it's all connected. So this is actually the end, but really it's the beginning. That's kind of like what you're going to have to see, that really it's the end, but it's the beginning. Why is it the end and the beginning? Because it's where you end up expressing it into reality, but then that same reality that you've expressed or that has been expressed is at the same time going to provide you with more nutrients, which is going to be assumed, assimilated, activated. The challenge of bringing it down, so the moment you create something, that recreates you. Look, there's a beautiful, this comes from a culture around here, but it's a very beautiful saying. It's really nice because it's really real. It says, when, for example, look, Laura, this is for you. It says, when you are making a garden or you're producing something, you think that you creating that, okay? You think the way of seeing is that me, David, is creating this field of vegetables or whatever, yeah? But what's happening in the moment that you're creating that, that is recreating you. Because the action of creating changes the creator. Okay, this is where you're going to have to begin to have like, time is a paradox. And the connection between the male and female, it's a paradox. So how can I say, look, a mother creates a son, okay? A mother creates a son. But then the son recreate, while the mother is getting to know the son, or getting to know, is what you call it, bringing up, you bring up the son, that is recreating you. So the future we manifest, or what we manifest, let me see how I'm going to explain. When you manifest something, you say, okay, that's done. That is expressed. But that which is done, what you're not seeing is that that is the future. It's a future version of yourself. So I made the carrot, you know, the ground and all that. And when I made it, I say it's done. But that really has changed you. Okay? So there is this, another way of seeing it. This is more kind of outward. This is more inward. That's another way we can see it. Okay? Inward, outward. Okay, so what is the feminine calendar going to try? How is it going to try organize time? What is the intention of the feminine calendar? It is organizing time based on the dialogue of this basic structure, of this map, of this mappa. And it's a way of having a relationship with time, that time is expressing a dynamic process of transformation, which goes from the expressed to the non-expressed, from the non-expressed to the expressed, in this kind of interconnected dialogue. Because sometimes you say, okay, the non-expressed is the cause, or it's the source of the expressed. Now, look at the paradigm. When you express something, how can I say this? The act of expressing it means that nothing can renew the new version to be expressed. So when you manifest it, then that is it can renew, it can activate a new potential within itself. So the renewal of expression of nothingness depends on how we express it. So how can I say this? Silence. Silence is the origin of every song in the world. Now, what transforms silence? What innovates silence? So when I express a new type of music, what's happening there? I am taking it out from the non-expressed to the expressed. Okay. Now, this is the thing. When I've expressed it, then silence can express something new of itself. Because that's already going to be old. In a way, that's why we have this feeling that music should evolve. Because if it's always the same song, something feels bored. What feels bored? Why don't we like listening to the same song or the same type of music generation after generation? Because silence gets bored. It wants to express a new version. It says that's already been expressed. So the act of expressing it is renewing on a new question. Can you guys see this, or am I becoming a bit too yin-yangish here? Oh no, how is this going? Give me feedback, because now I'm kind of, I need the other direction to know where this is going. It's going okay? All right. Good. This is the thing of the non-linear. This is the thing of the non-linear. Is that the beginning and the end are the same point. It's like this paradox that we're going to see. So we could say silence is the origin of music, but a song is the origin of a new version of silence. Can you see that? Because silence doesn't want to repeat, it knows that aspect of itself. It wants to activate a new tune, a new selection of itself. It has a new question. It says, okay, rock and roll, okay, you know what I mean? It's like, I want something, so then it's going to look for a new version of music. So the act of expressing a new melody is what renews silence. It renews it. It renews the question that it renews the potential it can open. But I'm not sure if you can see in this, using the analogy I have. In the way that music evolves, it doesn't, how can I say, it doesn't express all the possible songs that silence can express. No, it does it in a process. It does one version, it becomes obsolete, a new version. That is linear, but all those versions of music are all together in silence. So what is our sensor doing? What is our brain doing in a way? Yeah. It's like the wave aspect, it's all simultaneously occurring. So what is the sensor doing? It's allowing a selection and an expression of one of those versions. And it does it in a sequence. And that is the adventure of there's something that I have no idea. There's a version of reality that I can't even begin to imagine that it's there in what we call in the non-expressed. Just waiting for the right time. Just waiting for the right time. So there's a selection of how silence begins to talk. Now let's put it, there's a selection, there's a way of organizing the way that nothingness communicates with itself. There is a underlying script in a way, we could say. But the script, the actor comes, plays the play, and it actually, the way that it plays the play can change the script. Look, for example, I capture a melody in my head, but when I begin to play it, the act of expressing it starts changing my idea of the melody. So I receive it in a non-manifested, but when I manifest, it actually changes my concept of it.
David?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of fishing for something. I can't seem to find it, but maybe it's in a little conversation. It's kind of showing up like I'm somewhat horrified when going back to the music analogy. It's
Yeah.
like I'm somewhat horrified if we were still listening to Gregorian chants, right? Like life without rock and roll, you know, if it didn't happen, you know, and the evolution of it, but that itself is the universe evolving. And, you know, it's just, I guess I'm kind of trying to touch that cycle of the new, you know, always new creation.
Yeah. The way that I can touch on that cycle, okay, we could say that there's an organization. There's a reason why rock and roll came off the Gregorian chants. So meaning that when nothingness decides to express itself, it has like a kind of like it's like when white light is refracted, it has a sequence. Yeah. That sequence of expression into space-time, there is a kind of reason, because the next layer is depending on the previous one to be there. It's like, this is an example sometimes I put, you can't have a branch without the roots. So there's this logical interdependent sequence occurring there. And the way that I see it in numbers is the following. Now let's look maybe in years and time, okay? In the calendar. And the biorhythm, at least, this is, by the way, one thing I wanted to say. At the same time, the feminine calendar is connecting with obviously this structure, this logical structure, but is also connecting with the earth, with the sun, basically that's time, the relationship, but it's also a tool for the human antenna, okay? That's why the organization in 4, it has to do with something, with how the human processes, all right? So one way of seeing it, Jeff, is this organization in 4 years. That's one way of seeing a cycle. We're talking about yesterday. Well, Laura was with me yesterday, so I'm not sure how her CESO is doing. I'm not sure. Do you remember that moment that there was this explosion in movements of protests around the world? Like it happened in Spain. It happened with the Arab Spring. It happened with the Wall Street. What is the name? The
Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street, and that kind of happened in a period, and then it just stopped. And when we looked at the periods, all those movements happened in the 503rd period. Probably I should have explained that before. Of the calendar that we're living in. When the 504 started, which was after 2012, famous 2012, that stopped. It was like that was not necessary anymore. That cycle, that emergence was not necessary. There was something new that had to be emerged. Yeah. So the way that cycle that you are like trying, what is the biorhythm of that cycle? You know, like what is the biorhythm of that cycle? The way that we are going to talk about that biorhythm of that cycle is in these 4 years. These 4 years that make up 365, 1 year, 365, second year, 365, third year, and we have 366, but really what's happening is it is 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, And this 0.25 makes up 1, okay? If we sum it all together, the total of this is 1,461, okay? Now, the number, it is a format, a new format for a potential to be manifested. It's like a format for a potential to be manifested. If we're looking at it in the way that, so for there to be able to be, how can we say, a song of rock and roll, we need a format. We need the design. We need a design because silence needs a design to be able to express itself. For example, an instrument. It needs an instrument to be able to express itself. But the instrument has to like the Gregorian chants, the only instrument we needed was voices. But rock and roll, you can't just do rock and roll with voices. You need a new design for that potential to touch reality, to be expressed into reality. So this is the cycle idea, is each cycle has like a song. Let's call the calendar the history of music, okay? The evolution of music. Now, there is an order of expression of this evolution of music. And the biorhythm is this kind of, this aspect of 4. The way that we're going to see it with, you see, because it's the way that humans have organized their time. So this also, the feminine calendar has a lot to do with a human use. And it is a way of organizing time, and that is also organizing my seso, to connect with these areas that constitute the dialogue. The non-manifested, the manifested, the feminine, and the masculine, okay? The left and the right. So now we're touching in the elements of time here, yeah? We're touching in the elements of time. And the way that well, first of all, the time is cycles, isn't it? The more clear cycle we have is day and night make up one day, meaning the cycle of the earth rotating around itself. That is the most essential cycle of time that we are connected to. It's the fundamental cycle of time. So when we're talking about time, we have to say, what is my space reference? Because if I don't know my space reference, I'm lost in time. This is, we could say Einstein. It's like, you have to be clear about the space and the relationship between the space, and there you can set time. So first, it's like, okay, I'm a human. I have to assume my position. If I don't assume my position, I'm completely lost in this. I could be anywhere. So I assume my position. What is that position? Am I a planet? No, I'm not a planet. Am I a part of a planet? Yes. Okay, well, am I a sun? No, I'm not a sun. I'm not a star. And you know, that's where I think, that's where I literally feel there's a confusion. You know, in the rock and roll stars, there's something in them that they believe that it's a very unconscious, I think, confusion, but literally they feel like they are stars, and the people receive them like they are stars. They idealize them. What happens? That creates, they don't assume their real position. They actually, they overvaluing themselves. And that's where I feel all these addictions, you know why? It's like, how can all these famous people, all these stars end up like meteorites? You know, like, why do they have so much problems? I believe because they don't assume their real position. It's like they are pretending to be sons, in a way, when they are part, they not, they a cell of an organism. Okay? So that's where this it becomes very important. After this very abstract, this very kind of pure extract of masculine, feminine, non-manifested and manifested, now it's where we have to go into, okay, that is the structure, but which is the contents of my living experience? Like which vehicle am I living through? Okay, a human, a part of this planet. That's where I have to locate myself in space, because if not, I'm going to be very, very confused, you know. And there, when you know your position in space, then you can see your relationship to time. When you see your relationship to time, then you can do the dialogue of all these elements of time. Yeah. Well, I think it'll be good a break at this point. Yeah. I think a break will be good. Yeah. Let's take a bit longer. As you can see, I'm not sure, there is a bit of a complexity going on here, but at the end of the day, it's touching the simplicity I connected with at the beginning. Yeah. So let's do that. Let's go for a break. Let's continue with this last part, okay? And Laura says something very, very interesting there. And you see, when you're going in this, like, from this activation of a new question, we could say, and that begins to express this new melody, you know, the movement is, in Spanish, it's no sé. In Spanish, no sé is I don't know. It's like no sé, I don't know. But in English, we can see knows. She says there, and it's very interesting because it is this. The nose is this. I can smell something fishy. They say, yeah. Meaning it's I don't know what it is. You know, I don't know what this new version is, but I have this anticipation. Like it smells, or it smells fishy, or it smells that has a smell. It senses good. Yeah. I think that's very interesting because the nose sometimes represents this aspect of us that can sense something, but we don't know what it is. It's just kind of, we sense it. That is like this anticipation, this activation of a new question which begins to express itself, you know, into the manifest, that we could say. Good one, Therese. There is a saying in English, the nose knows. Wow, that's very good, because that's actually very true. Like the actual, you know, the knowing of it, in the sense of the kind of understanding of it, it's not the first step. It's actually the last step. It's when we can put it into words, but first we smelled it. First the nose knows, and then we can express, like we could put it into words. Yeah, the limbic system in the brain. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Alejandra talks about. She talks about these two areas of the brain. It's not so important, the scientific way of seeing it. It's just for you to get the idea. She calls it actually has a name, which is two areas of the seso, which is Wernicke and Broca. Wernicke and Broca. It's after two, I think, scientists who discovered these two areas of the brain, which correspond to two very different functions of the communication. Wernicke has to do more with this kind of antenna, which is capting, you know, it's like an aspect of our brain which doesn't manage words, but it is receiving a communication, but it doesn't really manage it into words, like into expressed meaning, but it is getting it, you know? So it is getting it, but it isn't reaching this other area, which is called broca. Broca, that's why sometimes you have a feeling that I know it, but I can't say it. It's like there's something that I know, but it's very difficult to put into words, because your nose knows, but not you can't really put it into language. And that's where but the first step really is from Wernicke, you are actually receiving, let's put it this way, Wernicke, let's put it like more this, so it's kind of getting it here, and then it's expressing here. But then it changes as well, because then this area becomes a captor of the future. That's where these kind of connect. So probably it's better not to put it there. No, that's going to confuse you. Just for you guys to see that there's an aspect of your vehicle that has two mechanisms in your neurology, we could say. One, which is pre-verbal, and it can grasp an understanding. And then there's another one, which is it can put that into words. Wernicke and Broca. This is very important, because sometimes we feel that how is this? Because I can't put it into words, it means that I don't know it. And you know what happens is people that the broca, the aspect of putting into words, it's not their strong point, we could say. It's not their natural ability. But that doesn't mean that they don't know. It doesn't mean that they're not really getting it. It just means that the transition of explaining it is somehow not, the circuit isn't connected there. Yeah. So this is kind of this is important to know. Yeah. Because it's like this is capturing. Okay, in this direction, this is a future that's been manifested in a way. Yeah, it's like expressed. It's like the end result, but the end result is the beginning of the new. This decide is a paradox, because it's decide what to do with that end product and decide to open to the new. So that decision is a two-direction decision. It's the decision of what to do with that which has been expressed, and the decision to open again to the non-expressed. Okay? So that's where, in this direction, we can say that this new, we need the Wernicke to kind of capture it here. Yeah. Good. Okay. And also to see if a word for captar could be received or maybe even recognized. Yeah. It's a hard one, because I think you guys get the idea of captar is like this open. I think the thing of the radio, you know, this just opening, and then you capture a signal like that. So you are receptive, yeah, receive. You are receptive, and in that, but it's a reception without content. You see, that's the captar. That's why it's just like the mineral. It's just receptive what's in its environment. Then the one that starts to select is more the assimilate. That starts to do the selection. Yeah? Your stomach, what's in you, starts to do the selection. Yeah? It activates a new version, and that gives you the vital force in a way to express it into reality. Okay. I just wanted to mention something. You see that the first orientation of a child, of a baby, our first orientation was our mother and father. Yeah, that was like our first navigating system. It was the first orientation. And if you see it in the structure, it's like the mama and the papa. And they orient us in a lineal expressed way, but also in a non-lineal expressed way. So there's a lot of things that, how can I say, I am guiding my daughter, for example, as a papa, but there's a lot of things that I'm guiding that I don't know I'm guiding. It's like there is a connection between, in a relationship, where the non-expressed is also guiding the relationship. Can you guys sense this? So there's one area that, yes, I'm like, I'm guiding her, like I'm saying, okay, be careful, the road, and you know, if you touch that, you'll get burned. So there is a guidance there in the express. But then there's another guidance that I'm not even aware of. Select without armness. I don't understand. So can you select without armness? Awareness. Okay. Yeah. That's, well, what they say in the logic is when you dialoguing with something, well, there's an area where it's the positive area where you're speaking, but then there's also a dialogue between the negatives, I say, like the negatives, having a dialogue. Yeah, without interpretation. Yeah, without, you know, because this is the expressed, it's more like the conscious area. We could say this is the non-expressed, the unconscious. So, but all of it is guiding the communication. Look, an example, for example. I can consciously read this, but there's a whole bunch of things that I'm not aware of that it's allowing me to do that. Like, for example, very simple, like my circulation, my blood circulation, the oxygen use of the cells. There's a whole bunch of things in the negative that I'm not aware of. I'm aware of this, you see? But that is allowing me to do this. Okay, so the same thing is happening. So whenever you, for example, after listening to this, you could say, okay, there's an aspect of me that understood this, but there's an aspect of me that captures something that I don't know. So it's very important to also connect with that other area, and also with relationships. Like, okay, my conscious aspect is seeing this, but I know there's more to the story that I'm not seeing. So I open to that. What tends to happen is that what we tend to do is, this is what I see what the relationship is, or this is what I see what the relationship is happening, and that's what it is. There's no more to the story. There's no more. That's it. He's a dick. I'm a victim. That's it. That's how it ends there. You know, there's no more. It's like just. So that's where you close into what the visible. You're just closing on what your sesso can translate out of it, and that's it. You see? So you're not communicating with the other map, the non-linear map. You're not connecting with that. It tends to happen a lot. This is what happens. So that's why you feel that people, you know, like they always saying the same thing. They always look, an example of this. If we see Cuba, the country Cuba, we could say this is more about this area. If we put it in numbers, a way to put it, we could say it's more about the impersonal consciousness, which we tend to put 5, yeah? And we could say this is more like 3, okay? In a The code of Cuba is 53. I've already explained this before, but it's just kind of showing something. It's like if there's a blockage here, because there was one selection of silence, one logical equation of silence that was expressed in the mind was like, and they stuck to, it's just imagine like Gregorian chants, and that was expressed, and they stuck to Gregorian chants. And they're always saying the same thing, doing the same thing. And the worst thing is that they call it a revolution. It's like the paradox, you know? They say that they're living the revolution, but they're always saying the same things, reading the same books, admiring the same people. And it's like there's this feeling that it's just stuck in a period of time where there hasn't been an opening to the non-expressed to express something new. That's a revolution is this. A revolution isn't, I've got an idea and I stick to the idea. That's not a revolution. But it just kind of expresses, I feel like Cuba's expression is, I think, basically how we are using this 53 as humans. Yeah, it's like we just grasp, we get an idea, theory, and that's it. You know, that I'm from this team. You know, I can't dismantle my idea and open to a new version of silence. It's like you see these musicians that at one period they were in tune with this new rhythm that was emerging, and they went on the wave, and they got that, and they start making music out of that, but very connected with that new wave. But then you listen to their songs 2 decades after, and it's like the same. It's like something's not innovating here. You know, it's like it's like the same thing. Like stuck in time, kind of, you know. And that basically happens because they capture something, they got it, they expressed it, but they didn't open again the antenna. You see, they didn't open the dial. So that's why it's so important, you know, to kind of have these communicating, connecting. Okay. Now, with this organization in 4, in space and the dynamics of time, another way, electricity, the way that we use electricity is also very interesting. You see, when electricity, basically it's generation, transmission, distribution. And really at the end it's consumed. It's very similar, because really when they're saying generation, they're not generating, they're actually getting it from the environment. They're not generating it, rarely. What they're doing, what they're able to get is tap into it. And when they're able to tap into it, what they can do is convert it in a way that they can transport it, distribute it, and execute it. Yeah. Well, it has something very similar. It has the way that energy works. It's like it's capturing it. It's what they call what do they call it? Inversion. Yeah. Then they're able to kind of from here they can do the so it's what they call generation. I don't think it's the right word really, generation, which is they able to tap into it. What is it? It's generación, transmisión. Here they transmit it, and here they distribute it and consume it. You see? So it's like the same cycle, very similar. Good. Now, so we are this kind of vehicle. Now we have to go to the concrete. We've been to the abstract kind of axioms. Now we have to go to the concrete, because if not, it gets unbalanced. So the concrete, okay. Now in this whole beautiful story, where am I? Yeah. Okay, I'm a human. I'm an individual vehicle, a body. Okay. I assume my position, and I'm linked to this planet. Okay, so I know, and it seems like I'm very connected to that bright thing over there, the sun, and the other planets. By the way, I'm just gonna tell you another thing. If you, in Spanish, if you sum up all the planets, the names of the planets, you know, in Spanish, Mercurio and all that, Venus, Tierra in Spanish, and you put planet in front of it, because it's planet Earth, planet Venus, like that, because planet's like the surname, yeah? This is our family. What's the surname? Planet, because we all planets, you know? But we each have a different name. So if we put planet and that, and we sum them all together, the number that comes out is 1461. So what is a year? Because sometimes we only see the relationship with the sun. It's like, it's how a year is the relationship the Earth has with the sun. But really, it's with the sun and with other planets. Yeah, it's having a dialogue with the whole family, from the nucleus to the rest of the family members. Yeah. And remember, at the same time, the solar system is like, remember that is like the cell. It's which has got this nucleus, like a central nervous system, and then it's got the planet, which is like the organs, we could say, the membrane. And it's a solar system like a cell, which is having a dialogue with other suns, with other solar systems, and that makes up, it's like a neuron. It's actually like Alejandra calls the stars, it's the neurology of space-time, the expressed neurology of space-time. Like if it was neurons which have a center and they connect them with the other neurons. So the whole universe is a neurological net, you know, it's sewing relationships. And but it establishes this dialogue with the sun, the planets, yeah, and that communication. So that means that our family is having a dialogue with other families, yeah. But I think for the human, at least, it's good enough to understand that I'm having a dialogue with the Earth, the sun, and we can even begin to say, okay, come on, brothers and sisters. But first, we have to be clear with our mother and the father. Yeah? Okay, so what I'm saying is that if we sum up the planet and the name of the planet in Spanish, it comes up with this number. Okay, 64. Can you see 64 here? And you see 1 here? 64 is a very important number also. Very important number. 64 has this expression like in the I Ching, or you know, the 64 cells before there's differentiation. So 64 is very important here because what is it? The potential of a design. And there, when there's a potential of a design, there can be differentiation. So 64 is also this important number. Yeah. As you can see, always when we're looking at a number, you see it from the past, from the future, from left to right, right and left. And this is the amount of days it takes the Earth to go around the sun 4 times. which is important for us as humans. Why? Because it synchronizes our calendar. What is our calendar? The instruments we use as a species to be able to organize time. Okay, so that's why also this has an importance for the human. Yeah, 1461, which has to do with a new design for a potential to be manifested. Yeah, so it's the process. It's like 1461 days, a process. Good. If we look at our calendar, and the process has this year, like the mineral year, if you want, the vegetable year, the plant year. It's a way of putting it, but the year has a nature in it. It has a biorhythm, and because the way that we go through 1461 days has to do with creating a new version. Okay, that creation of a new version has a sequence. It has like a rhythm. Yeah, and that rhythm follows this kind of assume, assimilate. It's like the rhythm. It's like I can't expect to use let's say energy in a way, you know, and if I haven't eaten first. So there's a step. First I eat. Yeah. Imagine that I want more iron. Okay, well, first I have to eat something that has iron, assimilate it for my body to retain iron. Then it has iron, and then I can use that iron that's going to bring better oxygen. Like it can have a better oxygen process for my blood, so I can manifest. You know, I can do the movement, but it has a sequence. First, I have to eat. Okay, to follow that first one. Okay, so the question is, we are in our calendar that we use globally to kind of. There's other calendars, meaning they have different. They connecting with different biorhythms of the same Earth. Okay, so it doesn't mean that one calendar cancels. It just means it has different it's just connecting to a different biorhythm. So this year zero, it's a year zero in an aspect of the human, not of the Earth. The Earth has a very different zero. It manages a lot greater lengths of time. So that's where we also have to see how we can assimilate time in the possibilities that us as humans have. Yeah? Now the question would be, how many cycles of 4 have gone from 0 to 2019? Okay. Well, we've been through 504 already, but we are moving on the 505. Let's go in the last. Let's see the last period. Yeah? The period 503, 504, and we are on 505. Okay. And just for you guys to know that when in the year 2000, the cycle 500 began, which is very interesting because there's something about the millennial, you know, moving to a new millennial, in this millennial recreation and stepping into this 500. There's something important there, yeah. But 503, 504, 505. Yeah. So this would be the 503 would be from let me see, this one would be from 2016 to 2020. This one is 2012, no, 2017, sorry. So one is 213. 213. So 2016. Okay. And this one is 20. 15. No, 11. And I'm getting confused. This one would end in 2012. And
2009, no?
2009, yeah. There. Okay, so for you to guys see this relationship, yeah? And in these 4 years, we have 503. 503 is kind of expressing like, that's that song. It's the song that we are going to be looking into, this new song, okay? Now, for that new song to occur, we have to do this whole process of 4 of assuming, assimilating, activating, challenge, and deciding, or expressing and deciding. So or I'm not sure if you want to put it in the biorhythm of mineral, plant, animal, and human, if you want. That's another way of putting it. It's just for you to understand that there is a process, and that process has a dynamic, which there's a structure to it, yeah? Or we could say eating, digesting, activating, and then kind of, how can we say it? You know, like using that, deciding how to use that energy. That's another way of seeing it. Okay, so whatever kind of allows you to grasp the notion. So 503 is this period here. It ends with this famous 2012. And then we have the 504. Now the logic where it begins, Alejandra's process is 2012. Okay. But really, when she begins to share it with on the YouTube and all that, is in 2013. And look at the period. It's 504. It's 504. 54 is Argentina. Okay. Now 54 is like, how can I say? It's like the impersonal logic or the impersonal consciousness generating a design. Okay. But when you have a 0, what does a 0 mean? It means the end of a cycle, the beginning of a new cycle. A 0 is an ending and a beginning. That's a 0. Okay. So whenever you see a 0 there, it's something that is ending and something that is beginning. And there's a reason why this kind of came out of Argentina, because it had to do with a new algorithm that had to begin to design a new algorithm to establish a new design. What had to end here for this to establish, at least the way that I see a mature state, that whole aspect of the mystical, the connection with the abstract is something mystical. And in that mystical aspect, a great level of projection of our own fantasy archetypes. It is like a new logic of the human design had to begin to emerge, to establish, which is for us to have a logic in the design for another level of maturity. And the level of maturity was to begin to see that this dialogue between personal and impersonal has nothing to do with something, you know, magical and all that. The way that we made old fantasy, which 2012 was boom with the fantasy, mystical fantasy, like wow, it was shooting all over the place. But then that kind of died out, and this began like this new logic, ending a logic of the design and beginning a new logic for the design. Yeah. And there's this first period of the global convergent logic. Yeah? You're going to say something, Laura?
No.
Good. And now we are on this one here. Now, this is a different moment. This had more to do with an abstract reconstruction. An abstract reconstruction. I call this period, at least in my life, reconfiguring my algorithms, my negative algorithms. But this had to do with a different movement, especially in this. It had to do more with that new algorithm beginning to express it into reality. Okay? In Spanish, the word reality, realidad, when you sum it up, this word, it sums up 55, which is very beautiful because reality is something very, we normally see it as something that's very concrete, which it is. Okay, it has that group, and it's Brazil, yeah, Brazil, the Amazons, and all that. What happened, you know? But wait, let's just so it's very concrete reality, but at the same time, what is the impersonal logic that is configuring that reality is abstract, and it is like this reconfiguration of reality linked with the human. This is linked to the human. And that's where I saw this kind of like reconfiguring my design, the design of the human design with the new algorithm, which it had to be a more coherent algorithm, a more mature algorithm. We can't continue with this kind of very infantile science versus religion. You know, it's like all the mystical, magical fan. No, we need. There had to be an update in our human design. Yeah, at least the beginning of an update. Now that was a reconfiguration of the abstract, but now this is more about bringing it into this reality. That algorithm, which is, there's an algorithm that is ending and there's an algorithm that is beginning. And it had more to do, if this had to do more, the concrete was available to the abstract. This one had to do from the abstract beginning to move into the concrete. So this year, at least for me and a lot, it was very much about reconfiguring the abstract notions I have, you know, of my design. And this had to do more about bringing it into reality, which is still occurring. Yeah? 55 also is Brazil. 55 is Brazil. And this kind of, you know, there's something significant about the burning of the Amazons, you know, this lung of the planet. And if you see 5, the impersonal conscious is like it's the lung of my consciousness. It's that which is providing me the new oxygen. And well, with this kind of thing happening, which is a burning, but if we could say, okay, yes, there's something that is being ending, but something that is being renewed. Like when you got ashes, actually what you got is a fertilizer. probably one of the best fertilizers there is, the ashes. Okay. I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave it for today. I'm going to leave it here. This was this first module was to give the key notions of this, because what we're going to go in the next class is to see this organization of a year using this system. Okay, because we have 4, and each is going to be 4. There's going to be weeks of 4. We can say weeks of 4, which make up months of 16. But before doing all that and looking into all that, I just wanted to present this kind of the structure, expressed in space, expressed in time. And now we're going to see this feminine calendar. Feminine also because it gives us this, this feminine, it gives it a dynamic movement. So I think I think for today, that's enough. I think that's enough for today. So now, recommendation is, there's a part that you have received in your conscious level, but there's a part that has been received in the unconscious. So now allow you assumed your position, you received it, okay? Now allow the assimilation, and naturally there will be an activation on. So that's something that you had in no. Now if you allow it, it's going to go in on, and then it will begin to. You'll begin to see that new version expressed of yourself, okay? Because if I go into more, I think that it's going to get a bit too much. It's going to get a bit confusing. I think this is like the building blocks, and then we can go into the next step in the next module, okay? So, thanks a lot to you all. I recommend you watching, especially probably this one, recommend you watching it again, because I feel it has the key elements to understand the rest, which is going to become a bit more complex. There's going to be a level of complexity which is going to increase. So if you kind of grasp on this, just grasp on the notions. And I always kind of say that what's important to see is that you are this, so recognize how this system is working in your fractal. Begin to see the assuming part, the simulating part, the activating part, the manifesting and decision part, how to decide how to manifest the activating, how to decide to open to a new version. Like, begin to notice this in this, which is a logical structure, but it's expressed within your own particular life expression. Because that's where the theta could also be. Yes, see, that's the paradox of the theta. It's when you manifest something, it's like it's decide how to manifest that activation. But at the same time, you decide to manifest it, and at the same time, you decide to let go of it. You see? So it's like this paradox of what tends to happen with humans, that we manifest it, but we hold on to the manifestation. Like, it's mine. Copyright, mine. Now that is what's canceling your option of assuming something new. So you manifest it, and then you have to decide to let go. So it's an update. It's like the ending of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. So, muchas gracias. Hope you enjoyed the Spanish lesson. And we'll be learning more. Maybe I'll look into the grammar also. So take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As
Thank
soon
you,
as
David.
it's uploaded, I will be sending it, okay? Bye, Jeff.
Have a nice Sunday.
Bye.
Bye.
If you still have a Cecil left,
I'll be
enjoy.
dreaming with your voice, I think.
Laura was also with me yesterday, so she's
In Spanish and English. Yeah.
okay, guys. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Bye,
Thank
Gary.
you. Bye.